One madman is sticking his head into a crocodile's mouth, another is hugging a lion. The animals are not going to tolerate this. Watch how hippos, ostriches, and even lemurs have gone wild in zoos around the world. Tiger. It was a fun family day at the zoo, but then a 40-year-old man named Zhang was mauled by a tiger in front of his wife and child. This happened at the Ningbo Zoo in China. An important detail, Zhang did not accidentally wander into the tiger's den. He made a far from the best and even dangerous decision. In an attempt to avoid the entrance fee, he climbed over not one but two 10-foot walls and a wire fence. It is unclear whether Zhang realized he had entered the tiger enclosure. Another man who climbed over the fence wisely decided not to go further, but Zhang took the risk of going deeper into the enclosure. And that's when the problems began. The surveillance footage captured a horrifying scene. 3 tigers, keeping their eyes on the man, cautiously approached him. Then one of the tigers dragged Zhang into the enclosure. The zookeepers did everything they could to help. Firecrackers and water cannons were used. The tiger continued to grip the man's neck. Zhang resisted, even kicking the tiger in a desperate attempt. But a tiger is a tiger, and it didn't let him go so easily. Witnesses described the horrifying scene. The man, covered in blood, tried to get up, but the beast knocked him down. Only after an hour were the zoo staff able to free Zhang. Unfortunately, despite being rushed to the hospital, he was declared dead a few hours later. It's hard not to sympathize with Zhang's family, but the zoo management also faced criticism. Flaws in the security system allowed easy access to the tiger enclosure. The zoo was also criticized for shooting the tiger. Commentators argued that the animal acted instinctively. The incident became one of the most discussed topics on the Chinese internet. This is not the first case of such an attack in China. In July last year, a similar tiger attack in the Badaling Wildlife Park resulted in the death of a woman and left another seriously injured. A true nightmare for anyone who loves animals. And people, of course. But imagine it's not only predators that can attack. In the Changsha Ecological Zoo in China's Hunan province, an enraged hippopotamus unexpectedly attacked a zoo worker. A zookeeper with a cigarette in his mouth entered the enclosure where 2 massive hippos were locked in a fierce battle for dominance. As any animal expert will tell you, when 2 territorial males are fighting, you don't want to be the referee. In a bold move, the zookeeper tried to distract one of the hippos, but instead of resolving the situation, he himself became the target of the enraged animals. The zookeeper tried to escape, but he slipped on the wet concrete at the entrance, just as the hippo was preparing for a crushing attack. Something terrible could have happened, but the hippo suddenly stopped. It turned to munch on some greenery, as if the dangerous herbivore was taking a lunch break. The zookeeper surely thought he was safe and was about to get out of there. But the hippo wasn't finished. When he tried to leave, the enormous creature charged at him again. By some miracle, the zookeeper managed to slip away. Amazingly, he ended up unharmed. This tense moment did not go unnoticed. The Forestry Department of Changsha County quickly launched an investigation into the incident. They paid special attention to when it is safe and unsafe for staff to enter enclosures. Lesson: beware of male hippos. Despite their reputation as clumsy animals, hippos are among the most dangerous animals in Africa. They can become incredibly aggressive when they feel threatened, or when intruders invade their territory, and their bites can be fatal. This is not a theoretical risk. A tragic attack in Kruger National Park in South Africa claimed the life of the head of the Environmental Crime Investigation Department. He was on a hike with his wife when he was attacked by a similar hippo. The Changsha Ecological Zoo has already taken measures by reviewing and strengthening its training. They vow that such a situation will not happen again. After all, it's not only about protecting the people who care for these incredible creatures, but also about preventing unnecessary stress and aggression for the animals. Ostrich, imagine, you're at work, just doing your job, not bothering anyone. And out of nowhere, an ostrich decides that you are an enemy. This is exactly what happened at a Russian zoo in Penza. This unusual encounter sparked a storm of discussions on the internet. A zoo worker entered the ostrich enclosure, thinking it would be just another routine cleaning. But he didn't know. It was the peak of the ostrich mating season, and the male unexpectedly mistook him for a rival. The cleaner tried to defend himself with a broom. The ostrich knocked it out of his hands. The poor guy probably thought the birds knew him, but he was mistaken. The video shows the man falling and the ostrich delivering several serious blows. For 30 seconds, the bird stomps, kicks, and leans on the poor guy. By the way, these birds can weigh up to 120 kilograms. Their kicks can fracture a skull. The enraged ostrich didn't even stop at the worker. At one point, it tried to shift its attention to a zebra. That's when the man managed to escape. As explained by the chief veterinarian of that zoo, it was all about paternal instincts that got out of control. Male ostriches during the peak breeding season from June to October actively protect their family, especially when it comes to females and their eggs. Fortunately, the worker only ended up with a scratch. This was determined by the examination conducted by the zoo's veterinary team. The man declined further medical assistance. He continued to work like a true professional. Of course, the zoo took swift action. The worker received a reprimand for not following safety protocols. The rest were given a briefing to prevent similar incidents. Only 2 people should enter the enclosures with safety equipment such as shields or poles. While one cleans, the other appears to the ostriches as a larger and more dangerous animal. And don't worry about the safety of the visitors. There is a double mesh fence around the ostrich enclosure. Panda. When everyone watched Kung Fu Panda, they also thought that pandas are not really combative animals. An incident at the zoo proves otherwise. It happened one morning in the bustling Chongqing Zoo. A 9-year-old panda named Ding Ding decided to have a little tantrum, all because of an accidental hit on the paw. It was around 9 in the morning. The caretaker was doing her job and didn't suspect that chaos was about to ensue. She didn't notice that the enclosure door was left open, but Ding Ding noticed and tried to quickly leave, presumably to the back part of her home or to take a walk outside the enclosure. But the caretaker didn't let her do that. She hurried to close the door, and bam, she accidentally hit Ding Ding on the paw. Ding Ding wasn't going to forgive that easily. She rushed after the caretaker. During the next 40 seconds, there was a tense struggle. Ding Ding pressed down on the poor caretaker with all her weight, pinned her to the ground, and even bit her arm. The caretaker, despite the encounter with Ding Ding's fierce jaws, surprisingly was unharmed. The panda, having let off some steam after a few seconds, lost interest and wandered away. At that moment, the zoo employee managed to reach the door. She went to the hospital where doctors confirmed that she was fine. The zoo also promised to closely monitor the behavior of Ding Ding and later confirmed that the panda was eating and living normally. So all's well that ends well. There were other cases of panda attacks. Despite their cute and soft appearance, pandas have large teeth. Like any bears, they have a powerful bite force and sharp claws. Although pandas are herbivores, they do not back down if they feel threatened. In fact, there have been previous cases of panda attacks. Once, a panda bit a man, and he required a 7-hour surgery. And let's not forget the visitors of the Beijing Zoo who fell or climbed into the panda enclosures. For them, it ended with injuries to their arms and legs that required skin grafts. The panda's reaction can also be understood. But let's hope that Din Din's next encounter with the door will be a bit less turbulent. Indeed. What is a panda without peace and quiet? A lion. Just don't think that all such incidents happen in Chinese zoos. The Santiago Zoo in Chile became famous for one of the craziest incidents. A strange leap by a young man into the lion enclosure caused outrage and heated debates. The drama unfolded on a lively Saturday morning. Franco Luis Ferrada, a 20-year-old man, somehow climbed onto the roof of the lion's cage, slipped past the barriers and entered the enclosure, and he was naked. As if that wasn't enough, Ferrada started taunting the lions. At first, the big cats seemed indifferent, but then they couldn't hold back and began to attack. But what made the man undress and provoke? The king of beasts. Later, authorities found what they considered a suicide note. After cross-referencing and deciphering the handwriting, a mysterious message was revealed. It referred to the biblical story of Daniel in the lion's den and hinted at the apocalypse. It is likely that Ferrada was seeking a strange form of martyrdom. In his note, there was even a drawing, half lion, half human, with the caption, "I am a lion." The staff at the zoo were prepared, or so it seemed. At first, they tried to scare the lions away with water, but it didn't work. A tranquilizer dart was released. Suddenly, it hit Ferrada instead of the lions. The zoo staff were forced to take decisive action and shoot with live ammunition. As a result, 2 lions were killed in front of frightened spectators. The zoo director, Alejandra Montalba, supported the decision to shoot the lions. She explained that there were no fast-acting tranquilizers. The zookeepers had to act quickly to save Ferrada's life. She said it was very painful. At the zoo, the lions were considered part of their family. It's a difficult choice. On one hand, human life is priceless. On the other hand, beloved zoo inhabitants paid the highest price. A crowd gathered for a candlelight vigil to honor the memory of the animals. One of the lions was born in the zoo, and the other was rescued from a circus. Meanwhile, Ferrada's condition was critical. He sustained injuries to the head, chest, and pelvis, suffering both from the lion attack and the tranquilizer dart. Doctors feared it could be fatal. Nevertheless, after a few days, there were encouraging signs of recovery. After the incident, outrage erupted in Chile. Many called for the zoo to be closed. The Santiago Zoo had long been subjected to criticism. It was accused of poor living conditions, animals, and insufficient security. Lions had escaped twice. A puma rampaged after breaking free. The facility had everything from a drunken man falling into a chimpanzee enclosure, fortunately the chimpanzees just stole his shoes, to rescuing an elephant from a trench using a crane. Some claim that the deaths of the lions could have been avoided if the zoo had more effective protocols for handling dangerous situations. Others point out that the real issue is how we treat people struggling with mental disorders. Crocodile. A completely different incident occurred at a zoo in Thailand. Yet again, a person foolishly approached a predator. The island is the most tranquil tourist spot on the beautiful island. But that day, it was not peaceful. In front of a small group of curious tourists, a man was performing at one of the infamous crocodile shows. He knelt down next to a huge crocodile. The reptile lay completely still. Perhaps it was just waiting for its meal. The man held 2 wooden sticks. He confidently waved them in front of the crocodile's gaping mouth. The spectators watched with interest. But this daring performer wasn't just teasing the crocodile with sticks. He decided to put his entire head into its mouth. He was calm while his head was in the crocodile's mouth. For 10 seconds, the tension was building. Suddenly, the crocodile's patience ran out. It clamped the man's head in its jaws. The spectators gasped. The man screamed. The crocodile began to thrash and toss him around like a rag doll. Moo. This was no circus act. Afterwards, the man was left writhing in pain on the ground while the crocodile slipped back into the water as if nothing had happened. But for the victim, this was not the first such incident. Before the show, this man shared his story of dealing with dangerous animals. He talked about his past injuries, even showed a missing finger. Imagine that. And after all this, he still decided to stick his head into the crocodile's mouth. The Born Free Foundation doesn't criticize such shows for nothing. Its representative clearly stated that as long as direct contact continues between dangerous wild animals and people in captivity, such incidents are inevitable. Crocodiles are wild, unpredictable animals. They can and do inflict fatal injuries on people. It's time to put an end to such idiotic shows for the sake of animals and people, he said. Bear. But even attempts to care for wild animals can end in disaster. Another incident from Thailand illustrates this well. A 36-year-old man wanted to feed a bear, but not with himself. Nai Bum and 4 of his friends went to a remote temple in the rural province of Phetchabun. The group went there to see a small shrine, but their visit took a grim turn. They learned about a bear living in a tiny enclosure with the monks. The temple was asking for donations to feed the animals. They also kept a couple of dozen wild boars. Nai Bum, upon hearing about the bear's poor living conditions, leaned against the wall of the enclosure. Wanting to help, he hung bowls of rice on ropes in front of the animal. The bear named Bing had other plans. In a split second, Bing stood on his hind legs, grabbed Nai Bum by the arm and pulled him over the concrete fence. Bing pinned Nai Bum to the ground, sank his teeth into his side, and tore a piece from under his arm. His friends desperately tried to do something. They used sticks and cold water to stop the bear, but still it mauled the man for almost a minute. Only when emergency services arrived, the bloodied man was rescued and taken to the hospital and placed under careful medical observation. Nai Bhumu was lucky to survive. His injuries included deep bites, punctured lungs, and acute kidney failure. But he was able to speak again and eventually recovered. Despite the dangerous encounter, the bear was not considered particularly aggressive. The problem was not Bing's ferocity, but his eating habits. It was these that led to the unusual behavior. It turned out Bing was not starving at all. He weighed more than twice the average black bear. He was accustomed to being fed by visitors. According to experts, he developed a large appetite. The monks raised Bing along with other animals and visitors. Fed him so much that the bear became very fat. The head of the wildlife center said that the bear is greedy, but he is friendly with other bears. Usually bears do not attack people. At the same time, they are strong predators and in the wild spend most of their time searching for food and exploring the area. But Bing was kept in unnaturally confined conditions. However, with proper care, Bing's behavior could be corrected. After the incident, Bing was taken to the wildlife center. There, he was put on a strict diet to help him lose weight. This way, he can return to a healthier and more natural state. Lemurs. Finally, I want to talk about the cutest attack. A regular zoo report was interrupted by a sudden animal frenzy. It was supposed to be a simple story about the annual inventory at Banam Zoo, but the BBC reporter quickly realized that a report on lemurs would not be a simple task. He was standing in front of the camera when the lemurs found him far more interesting than any report. While he tried to speak, the adorable little primates started jumping on him, on his shoulders, around his waist, everywhere. The zoo quickly turned from ordinary to interactive. The reporter tried to push through. Lemurs sat on his shoulders and elbows, tugged at his sweater, and clearly enjoyed the attention. He even tried to wave his hand, hoping to distract the little, fluffy attention seekers. One of the lemurs bit his finger. Naturally, the reporter exclaimed, "Oh, you little—" he muttered, clearly in pain. Yet, at the same time, he managed to laugh at the situation. "I think this is one of the most enjoyable parts of the job, counting lemurs," he joked. Lemurs are native to Madagascar. They are endangered. Deforestation is the main reason for their population decline. Their social and trusting nature is part of what makes them so interesting. Yes, lemurs are cute, but they can also cause harm. At the very least, they can bite. Most lemurs weigh only about 5 pounds, but if they attack in a group, it won't be pleasant, and they are not shy about letting you know when they need attention. We can't help but sympathize with this reporter. He probably ended up with a couple of bruises, but also a very memorable day at work. But he can also be envied. The same cannot be said for the other participants. In the compilation,